Okay, as they say, opinions are like you know what. Everybody's got one. But I was watching those movies, The Kingsman, The Secret Service, and The Kingsman, The Golden Circle, and a few things popped into my mind while I was watching these movies, and I just thought, okay, people put their opinion out there, and sometimes it's interesting or it's thought provoking, and so that's the point of this. Going ahead and just getting another opinion out there to add to the churn. So in the first movie, The Secret Service, it kind of builds onto my thoughts that are more prevalent in the second movie, The Golden Circle. But if you notice, the thing that's kind of curious is who are the bad people generically, or who do they target as being the fools that are going to be used in that test run? It's religious people. And it's not just religious people, it's white religious people predominantly. And of what religion? Buddhism, neo paganism? No, they go after Christianity, which of course is kind of a misnomer since the character that we call Christ never said, create this religion based on what I'm telling a few select people and what the masses have to try to decipher to varying degrees of success, go out and create a religion and call it Christianity. So this is kind of a misnomer anyway. But then notice too how whether it was random or not, they chose Kentucky to be the site of this church with very extremist points of view. And what is Kentucky? Is it a southern state, or is it a northern state, or is it a little bit of both? And think about in the U.S. Civil War, a lot of Kentuckians supported the North, but then there were also a select group of Kentuckians that went with the Confederacy. So they were kind of smart or sneaky in that they didn't blatantly pick like Alabama or Mississippi, but then they also didn't blatantly pick in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. And I think this is kind of interesting in the way that they targeted religion and Christianity. We'll just stick with that word since that's the popular term or the popular way to describe that group or those groups. Is back in the 70s, they would poke fun or they would sort of show hippies as being of questionable character, or maybe they would show, skateboard punks or stoners. But notice they're not sort of targeting those groups. They're going after, as noted, white, ambiguously Southern conservative Christian. Anyway, it's not really any big deal. And it's sort of, turnabout is fair play. They used to take white people and put them in makeup to make them look like Native Americans. Asians were never allowed to be in the main roles. Any kind of minority were generically just shown in the background. So, hey, that's all good. But it's just good to always keep in mind when you watch movies these days to kind of notice either one, who are they focusing on in a negative limelight, or what kind of mindset are they focusing on? And then by omission, what's being said there. Because there's a power that the directors and the storytellers have where, in a fight scene, they can have, a bunch of skateboard punks, like I was saying, in the background. Or, they can show the stoner. And then that's sort of a criticism of what families, dysfunctional families. Why isn't that 20-year-old in college? Why are they a stoner, sitting on the beach, hanging out with their friends? Why aren't they working? Why aren't they paying taxes? This sort of thing. The other thing that's kind of interesting is, so the bad guy, Samuel L. Jackson's character in the Secret Service, what do they want to do? They want to depopulate the planet because, we have to save the planet from too many people. But then think about it like this. If that's what the so-called elites really wanted, then why would they stop Samuel L. Jackson? Why would they not be helping him or just creating that themselves? Or, why are they not just allowing Samuel L. Jackson's character to do that? So it makes you wonder then, right? They don't really want to depopulate the planet. So this movie is kind of showing you that's a red herring. That's a false path. That's a dead end. That's broken logic. You're getting stuck in a dead end because what they're sort of saying is, well, okay, if the elites really wanted to depopulate the planet, why haven't they done it already? Right? We had 6 billion people on the planet. Now we have 7. We're on the way to 8 billion. They seem to be failing. Now, what, if anything, ties in, and this fits in with the second movie, The Golden Circle, is, yeah, they don't want to depopulate the planet, but they're fine with, let's say, doing the slow kill or the slow death. So then that way, yes, you're slowly dying. You're never reaching your fullest potential, but you serve to pay taxes and to consume and to be a cog in the wheel, to provide a certain degree of productivity, to keep all that commerce going, right? Keep all that money flowing and exchanging hands. But then in the meantime, getting sick, needing medications, needing pharmaceuticals, buying into the latest craze, the grapefruit diet, the abrasizer, whatever, investing in the stock market. I mean, what purpose does it serve to lord over people if instead of having 10,000 people or 50,000 people to lord over, you only have 600 or 700, right? So we kind of need to think about these things. So you also kind of have to think about it like this. In The Golden Circle, it's interesting in that the Julianne Moore character is supposed to be, the baddie. But yet, again, they're revealing a certain degree of truth to people, but under the guise of it coming from a crazy person. So therefore, do you listen to them or do you ignore them? So here's Julianne Moore's Poppy character, saying, go ahead and eat that sugar. Go ahead and put those 3 or 4 teaspoons of sugar into your little 8 ounces of tea if you want. But just know that sugar is addictive. Sugar can be toxic to the body, along with tobacco and alcohol. And all these things are legal, so go ahead and consume it. But I'm the bad person for supplying heroin and ecstasy and marijuana and cocaine. So, wait a second, who's really bad, who's really good? Or think about what you're putting into your body. So you're shoving Doritos down your throat. You're eating all the additives and the dyes and the preservatives, but, whatever, pot's bad. So it's kind of interesting that it's sort of like they're saying, hey, think for yourself. But again, commerce, commerce, commerce. If people aren't eating Doritos, if people aren't drinking Coca-Cola, then what's happening to these Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies? And this is where your stock market comes from. What are you going to invest if there's no Coca-Cola to invest in? How are you going to make money if Frito-Lay isn't cranking out Doritos and Cheetos and all these things and people are shoving it down their faces? If people are just going back to grinding up some corn, making some masa, adding a little water and a little lime juice and a little salt, that's not going to make money, right? That's not going to create thousands and thousands of jobs. So it's kind of like saying, hey, think for yourself, maybe cut back on the sugar, but let's kind of just sneak it in there for people who are open to it or who maybe think they need to cut back on their sugar consumption, along with what is this whole legalism, legal, non-legal, that sort of thing. Okay, I thought that was interesting. The other thing I thought that was kind of interesting is, okay, who is really controlling the drugs, right? This is always the thing that people are asked to think about. Or these are things that are constantly brought up in movies. As the guy said in Boys in the Hood, are these average black people making, 20 to 40,000 a year? Are they the ones flying the drugs in from South America? Do they have the planes and the ships? And those, what do they call them, cigarette racing boats that can do like 90 miles an hour or whatever? Are they the ones bringing these things in? Or are they just the end of the line? Are they just the end of the train? So you kind of have to think about it then. What is Poppy really representing? Is she representing this supposed cuckoo person? And how is she existing without the intelligence agencies easily finding her and taking her out? Unless she's actually really a reflection or an example of a branch of the intelligence agencies that don't get to do the sexy stuff. They're not taking out terrorists. They're not trying to dupe cat burglars who are stealing $20 million necklaces out of a museum or something like that, or out of a billionaire's safe in their 30-bedroom mansion. No, these are the grunt intelligence agencies that are down in the muck, making sure the opium flows out of the, Afghanistan, making sure the poppies are grown in Cambodia, keeping the supply lines open, covering up the paper trail that leads to the chemical companies that are limited, that produce the chemicals in the process of turning raw opium into heroin. In other words, why can't a forensic auditor and all the powers of Interpol and MI5 and MI6 and the CIA and DGSE and all these good guys, why, with all those billions in their budget, and besides, who knows what's not on the budget? Just think of like the CAFR, the Comprehensive Accounting Financial Report. What money is not even on the official just budget, cash in, cash out. But then you think about it, let's say there's 10 major companies that produce the chemicals that are used to turn raw poppies into whatever, pharmaceutical grade heroin. Do a forensic audit on those. And then it becomes, hey, you produced 50,000 gallons of this chemical and only 45,000 gallons are accounted for. Where are these other 5,000 gallons? And then follow that from point A to point B to point C. And there's your plant, turning, poppies into heroin. And then, by the way, is not poppies and heroin mostly grown in just a half a dozen select areas within a specific latitude around the whole planet? So why not just go in and do like the Agent Orange move and defoliate that stuff and knock back production by 60, 70, 80%? So it becomes kind of interesting to think about this, I think. So then think about it like this then. Is Poppy really rogue? And how can she even represent a real person, even in this fictional, comical, witty, creative sense? Let's think about it like as I was saying. So Poppy represents a faction or a group within the intelligence agencies, or let's say their contacts, that then keep the drug production and distribution going, getting it down into the hands of your lower level drug dealers. So she's bitching or complaining because she's thinking, I'm getting no recognition, and she meaning these thousands of people who, if they get caught, are persona non grata because, hey, you got caught and this is bad. This reflects badly. So if the media does actually do their job and talk about these things, this is going to look really bad. So she's complaining because she's sort of having to, metaphorically hide out in the back shadows where, let's say, your Navy SEAL, CIA, DIA types that are going in and taking out the baddies, they get a degree of publicity, or at least their story sounds good, even in a fictional sense. Who wants to go home and tell their children or tell their adult children when they're in their 30s or 40s, oh, your dad, he helped to keep the drug thing going? Well, why, Daddy? Well, because public virtue, private vice. We count on people's vices to stimulate creativity, stimulate their productivity, and to consume. If people are too virtuous, right, fable of bees and all that, if people are too virtuous, then they're not going to consume, or they're not going to be very creative, or they're not going to be stimulated and then want to go out and do all these assorted things, from procreate to get in bar fights to come up with a new invention to just consume, eat, drink, and be merry. So again, Poppy's character wants to go full tilt. She wants all or nothing. Give me recognition. I'm done. I want to retire. And I want an end to this game that I've been doing for the last 20, 30, 40 years. I want closure. And in the meantime, I want my piece of the pie. So the system can allow that because what good does it do? It circles back on the depopulation. What good does it do to have all the people with the private vice of drug use to then drop dead in 2 weeks, rather than at least have them go through the slow kill, the slow death over 30, 40 years? And in the meantime, maybe they get sober and they turn their life around, but then maybe their new vice is caffeine or video games or drug, sex, rock and roll, whatever. And by the way, drug, sex, and rock and roll, that's already goofy. That's a redundancy, because rock and roll, right, that means intercourse. So if you just say drugs and rock and roll, the sex that's included. That's what it means. Okay. Anyway, just think about all the rock songs that talk about rocking and rolling and what they're really referring to. They're not referring to some guy and gal going, yeah, yeah, rocking out and headbanging at a concert with the devil Diablo, the which is actually that's actually the goddess. That's Sybil or Moloch or whatever. That really doesn't have anything to do with the whole Satan thing. That's a whole nother entity, but we'll go there in another day. So basically, you have to think about it then. These baddies who want to go full tilt, they're going off script. And that's a big no-no. Hence, you have the Kingsmen coming in, or the statesmen or whatever coming in and taking her out. Because, no, Poppy, you're going too far. It's okay that as long as you hide out in the shadows and you don't get caught and you have plausible deniability, or we can plausibly deny that you exist, you just do your thing and you'll be well taken care of. You just have to stay in the shadows. But you want to go too far now. You want to wipe everybody out, or you want to wipe out 20% of the population in 1 week. That's not acceptable. We need to keep the wheels of commerce going. We need to keep all the illusions and delusions and beliefs, good and bad, churning along so that it's business as usual. So the thing that's always interesting, you see this in all movies, why does the bad guy fail? Why does the James Bond nemesis fail? Because they are trying to go off script. It's one thing to have a little war where 100,000 die. It's another thing to have a big world war every 20 or so years and have millions die. But you're still only talking a fraction of the world's population and a small short-term dip in the world's production and productivity levels. So when these, quote, baddies want to wipe out, 40% of the world's population or 90% of the world's population, now that's going too far. So you could see it like this. Now everybody is against that bad guy. They have no allies. The Chinese are against them. The Japanese are against them. The Nigerians are against them. The Kazakhstanis are against them. The Germans are against them. Everybody's against them. And if you want to look at it from a God level, a spiritual level, you could say both the malevolent and the benevolent deities are against them because they're going off script. It's not time yet. So you're trying to do it before it's the right time. And this is why you always see it like this. Is James Bond flawed or is he perfect? Of course, he's flawed. Are the Kingsmen perfect or are they flawed? Of course, they're flawed. But yet they win out. Why? Because they're trying to maintain the status quo. They're not doing like Poppy or Spectre or Blofeld. They're not trying to do a big full tilt end game. Let's just end the book. Let's do a mass suicide. Let's just pop off all the nukes and wipe out 90% of the world's population. No, see, it's a game. Again, they don't want a depopulation. They, meaning this agenda, the plan, the big picture, the top 1/4%, whatever. The aristocratic families that go back 6 or 7 centuries. The gods. So you can be a James Bond and be flawed, and you might get killed one day, or you might fail or have unsuccessful missions. But when you're going up against the baddie who wants to go too far off script, then that baddie is destined, predestined. The end is already done. They will fail. And the movies reflect this. Anyway, that's how I see it. So you can see it in this story. So I was a bit premature in my farewell adieu to you all. I had a few more things I wanted to go ahead and just get out there about these two movies that just sort of popped into my mind after I finished that last little recording session. Anyway, it's kind of interesting to see how they didn't really portray the U.S. president in a very positive light. They did this with a lot of the other world leaders, but they really focused on the United States. So it's kind of interesting because the movie definitely had a sort of a British centric viewpoint, as hey, we are the superior intellect, you the Americans or everyone else are sort of second class, but of course if we need your help, or of course if we need to work with you, then we'll do so. But if you think about it, the U.S. president was going to go ahead and let the people who were addicted to drugs or had drug issues or just used drugs and then were exposed to the Julianne Moore character's, poison or poisoning, they were just going to let those people die. And again, that kind of circles back onto that private vice, public virtue, where vices are actually desired because it stimulates consumption and it gives you a reason to be able to blackmail people. And I was going to circle back on that because it's kind of interesting. During sort of the French Revolution and in the early 1800s there in France, it was pretty common for the superintendent of the police chiefs. They would love to keep an eye on all the brothels and the thieves because, again, with those vices, not only are you seeing what each person's weaknesses are, is it, physical, or is it drugs, or is it something like gambling? Well, one, then you can use prostitutes to get information from people, or if you get somebody into debt, then you can force their hand, or you can use those vices as a way to blackmail somebody to get them to give you information or to help you cover up something that you've done. So it's always a way to just sort of allow people, give them as much rope as they need to expose themselves or to get themselves into trouble. So, you see where the U.S. president in the Golden Circle fails to see this. And so, then the Kingsmen and or the statesmen have to come in and correct things because even this, elected or selected politician, actor, or corporate president, CEO, get it, the president, chief executive officer of a municipality or corporation. Anyway, we can talk about that at another point. But you can kind of see, they can't take the president out because they have to sort of respect the sanctity of the process and of that position. And so then rather than expose themselves in, just eliminating the president, let's say, because he's a threat and that he's doing nothing, to prevent all these people around the country from, or around the planet from dying from this Julianne Moore character's poisoning of the drug supply, instead they just have to work around it because, it's sort of secrecy must be protected, even if it means these people will die. But hey, we've got the gods backing us anyway, because as we kind of talked in the last session, if you try to go full tilt, if you try to speed things up, if you try to eliminate people that are necessary, then you're even going to get the benevolent as well as any malevolent gods working against you. So the Kingsmen, let's say they know that they have that in their hip pocket, where even though they may really be weakened, which in the movie, Poppy takes out all but a couple, Merlin, the Eggsy character, and then you find the hairy Colin Firth character still alive. So the Kingsmen definitely suffer damage, but they are not vanquished, or they are not defeated. So anyway, you can kind of see, though, also think about it like this. So the statesmen made their money off of alcohol. There's your vice again. And that can become a negative, dysfunctional addiction for people. How did the Kingsmen maintain their front? Oh, through fashion and style. Yeah, you could say, well, they're relying on some sweatshop in Sri Lanka where people are working 7 days a week and 10, 12 hours a day and they're only making, a dollar an hour. Oh, but this is high fashion, this is high style, these are high quality fabrics and textiles. So, of course, the Kingsman would never support something so gauche and cruel as that. So, you can kind of see that British or English aristocratic superiority coming in again. Oh, the Americans made their money through alcohol. Well, we can, of course, enjoy, a nice scotch or a nice whiskey or a nice bottle of wine. But of course, we can maintain control and we will not become addicted like the plebs or the public or the masses, who are going to swill cheap beer, cheap wine, and then just get blottoed on low quality whiskeys and vodkas and things like that. So, did they give the Americans kind of a classy front? Well, somewhat, but it was still in the vice category, which is the much more benign and sensible and fashionable, Kingsman front with the suits and everything. Um, so it's also kind of the last thing is notice how in the first movie, the Dumbledore character, Michael Gambon, or no, it's Michael Caine rather, pardon me. Gambon shows up in the second one. Michael Caine flips to work with Samuel L. Jackson, so he's a traitor. Then in the second film, The Golden Circle, it's one of the statesmen flips because his girlfriend, his fiance died from a couple of meth heads killing her in a crossfire shootout, a rampage. So these two people decide to basically become traitors or to go rogue, but notice nobody seems too bent out of shape about these things. It's sort of accepted that, hey, humans have to rebel. The main thing is that spirit of rebellion, right? And this goes all the way back to the inception of men and women, mankind, humanity. It's that seed of rebellion that we carry with us that can never be stamped out, right? So it's whether you're rebelling against tyranny or you're rebelling against a foolish president or a foolish leader who doesn't understand, or you're even rebelling against your own secret organization, your fellow intelligence agents, your fellow Secret Service, organizations. Well, do we like it? No, but we sort of accept it because, hey, people are going to think for themselves. And, generally, as long as it's just isolated cases, this is just part of playing the game. You can't change, this is part of the spirit of the game that some people are going to either cheat or go rogue. And so because you can use it for your gain, well, then you can't overly criticize or be overly concerned when you have to experience it from what you think is a peer or a trusted, co-worker, let's say. Okay? And this will be the final adieu and goodbye, auf Wiedersehen, and an adios to you.